I thought I had it all. A marriage, a home, two kids who made everything worth it. Everything in my life was a series of predictable moments. At 45, I felt like I'd earned the comfort I now lived in. The little routines that everyone else finds dull, those were my treasures. The laughter at the dinner table, the way she would reach for my hand in the grocery store, the way our life was simple and steady. I didn't know then how fragile it all was, how silently fragile. I thought we had the perfect balance. Love, partnership, all of it. She was everything I could ask for. There were no grand gestures, no fireworks. But I didn't need them. I thought we had a connection that would last forever, a love that was reliable, comforting, even a little boring in the best way. And for a man in his 40s, that's all I needed. Stability. Peace. She packed my lunch in the mornings, not because she had to, but because it was just what we did. We split the chores without a word, because it was just expected. And every night, she'd make dinner, not for any special occasion, just because that's how our home worked. She wasn't demanding, and neither was I. There was no need for drama, no need for surprises. Our life was a quiet celebration of routine. I thought I had it figured out, that I'd reached a place where I didn't have to worry anymore. It felt like I had made it. No more chasing some ideal love story, no more wondering what was next. We had built something together, steady, predictable, and real. I was proud of it. So proud. It started so quietly, almost imperceptibly. Little things at first. I'd come home from work, and she wouldn't greet me with the same warmth, the same smile. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was just tired or stressed. We all have our off days, right? But then, the irritability. It wasn't like her. She'd snap at the kids for no reason, her patience thinner than I'd ever seen it. And with me, well, I began to walk on eggshells. I didn't dare make a joke, didn't want to ask about her day. It felt like everything I did was wrong, like everything I said irritated her. At first, I thought it was just a phase. After all, life gets complicated, doesn't it? And then there were the moments when she'd sit in silence for hours, her eyes distant, as if she was looking at something just out of reach. The spark was gone, the one that used to light up her face when she talked about her favorite books or that trip we once planned. It was replaced with nothing. Her laughter, once so warm, now sounded hollow, as if it didn't quite reach her eyes. And when she spoke, it was often in that sharp, dismissive tone that I hadn't heard in years. I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself it wasn't anything serious. But deep down, something in me began to twist. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what. Or maybe I didn't want to know. As the weeks passed, I began to notice the distance between us growing. It wasn't like she was physically gone. No, she was still there, in the same house, at the same table, sitting across from me every night. But it was like she wasn't really there anymore. I tried to talk to her, to reach out, but our conversations had become so shallow, so forced. We no longer talked about our dreams, our plans, or even the small moments of our day. It was all just surface level. How was work? Good. What's for dinner? I don't know. It felt like we were both holding our breath, waiting for something to break, waiting for a fight, a reason to argue. Because when we spoke, it was often with the undercurrent of tension that I couldn't explain. I began to realize that she was always distant, always preoccupied, even when she was right in front of me. She was there, physically present, but emotionally, nowhere. And I felt like I was becoming a ghost in my own home. The more I tried to bridge the gap, the wider it seemed to grow. I felt myself retreating into myself, just as she had. And what terrified me most was that I didn't know how to fix it. How could I? How could you fix something you can't even understand? Every night, I sat beside her on the couch, the silence between us louder than anything we'd ever said. I didn't know when it happened, but I stopped trying to connect with her. It was like we were two strangers passing through the same life, without the energy to even look at each other. It happened late one night. I don't know why that moment stuck with me. It wasn't some grand confrontation, some screaming match that would be easy to point to as the breaking point. It wasn't even a typical fight. No, it was a simple, offhand comment, but it hit me like a slap. We were in the kitchen, me standing by the counter, and her sitting at the table. The silence was thick, but I was used to it by then. I made a joke, just a little one, the kind we used to laugh about. I saw her glance up at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw something familiar in her eyes. Maybe it was a flicker of warmth, a reminder of the woman I had once known. But then she spoke. The words were casual, almost too casual, but they were sharp. Why do you even bother with that stuff? It's not like anyone cares. It wasn't the words that cut so deep, it was the way she said them. It was the way her tone was completely devoid of affection, as if I was just some inconvenience in her day. Something inside me snapped. The hurt didn't come from the comment itself, but from how much it mirrored everything else. Her disinterest, her disregard for the relationship we'd spent years building. I stood there for a moment, caught off guard, before I said anything. But I couldn't shake it. That single comment, so small, yet so brutal, seemed to echo in my mind for hours, refusing to fade. Her cruelty wasn't loud or obvious. It was quiet, insidious, and it was starting to break me. In that moment, I realized something that had been creeping up on me for months, but I'd been too afraid to acknowledge. This wasn't just a phase. It wasn't just stress or a rough patch. She was different. Something was wrong, and I had ignored it for far too long. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I had been trying to avoid it, trying to push it down, but after that night, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to confront her. It wasn't easy. She was sitting on the couch, as usual, scrolling through her phone, her back turned to me. I stood in the doorway, watching her, the weight of the moment pressing down on my chest. I took a deep breath, tried to steady myself. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to say, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. She didn't look up. "About what?" I walked over, stood in front of her. "About you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "About everything." She rolled her eyes, a gesture so familiar that it almost hurt. "This is about that stupid joke from the other night, isn't it?" "No," I said, the frustration bubbling up. "It's not about that. It's about you. You've been different for a while now. You've been shutting me out. You're angry all the time, and I don't know why. I don't know what happened to us, but I can't just keep pretending like everything's normal anymore." For a moment, she didn't say anything. Her eyes flickered over to me, and I could see the defensive wall go up, the one that always shielded her from anything real. "You're just overreacting," she said dismissively. "It's nothing. I'm fine." But there was something in her eyes, something that flickered for just a moment before it disappeared, a look I hadn't seen in years. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was talking to a stranger. She wasn't fine, and she knew it. But the way she deflected, the way she shrugged it off, was like she was already checked out. Like she was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach. I felt a stab of pain. She was right there, physically, but emotionally, I was already losing her. "You're not fine?" I said quietly, feeling the truth hit me harder than I expected. "I know you're not. Please, talk to me. What's going on?" Her gaze hardened, and she stood up, brushing past me without another word. It was like the conversation had never happened. I felt small, invisible, as she moved away from me again, retreating into the silence that had become so familiar. And just like that, the moment was gone. There was no closure, no breakthrough, just a door slammed shut. The days that followed felt like walking through thick fog. It wasn't that the silence between us had grown. No, it had already been suffocating for months. But now, after that failed confrontation, it felt heavier, like I had pulled back a curtain, only to find that the light was gone and there was nothing but darkness behind it. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, blank, distant, the way she had brushed me off, the way she walked away like nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just tried to reach her. The guilt gnawed at me. Why couldn't I have just been stronger? Why hadn't I seen it earlier? I was angry too. So angry. Angry at her, angry at myself. But most of all, angry at the situation that had swallowed us whole without either of us noticing. Her absence in the relationship wasn't just emotional anymore. It was physical. When I looked at her, I didn't see the woman I married, the one who laughed at my dumb jokes, the one who held my hand in public. I saw a stranger, someone whose every action now felt like an effort to shut me out. And I didn't know how to fix it. Our house, which used to be our home, now felt cold, suffocating. The walls seemed to close in every time I walked through the door. I tried to reach out, tried to talk to her like everything was okay. But each time, the conversations turned dull, mechanical. I couldn't even tell her how I felt without her pulling back, without her eyes glazing over like she was somewhere else. Somewhere I couldn't follow. I started to realize something I had been avoiding. I wasn't the one who had checked out. She had. And now, it felt like I was suffocating in her absence, in her refusal to engage. I tried to focus on work, tried to lose myself in the busyness of the day. But it didn't work. How could it? The truth was like an anchor around my neck, dragging me down every time I tried to break free. The truth that maybe, just maybe, we were too far gone for anything to fix. And I didn't know what to do with that. It's funny how, when everything starts to fall apart, your mind drags you back through the years, through all those moments that seemed insignificant at the time. Little things. Small, quiet moments that, in hindsight, were the first cracks in the foundation. They were always there, I realize now. I just didn't see them. I remember how, in the early years, she used to come to me when something was bothering her. She wasn't afraid to talk about it then. She'd sit beside me on the couch, her eyes wide with concern, and say, "I don't know what's wrong with me today." I'd hold her hand, tell her it would pass, that it was just a rough patch. She'd nod, her face softening, and we'd carry on like nothing had happened. I remember that night, years ago, when she seemed so small, so fragile. I asked her what was wrong, and she whispered, "I don't know. I just feel like I'm losing myself." I could see it in her eyes, something broken, something scared. But I didn't take it seriously. I told her it was just a phase, that everyone feels lost sometimes, that she'd find her way again. I should have listened. I should have asked her to tell me more, to explain it. But I didn't. I didn't push, didn't dig deeper, thinking it was just a temporary thing. We all go through moods, right? I convinced myself it was nothing, that she'd bounce back. And then there was the day she told me about the fight she had with a friend, how the argument had shaken her, how it stayed with her for days. I tried to offer comfort, but she shut me out. I should have noticed how that seemed to linger longer than it should have. I should have asked her if she needed help, if she wanted to talk about what was really bothering her. But instead, I let her withdraw, gave her space, told myself it wasn't a big deal. Now looking back, I see it all. I see the quiet pleas for help, the little signs I ignored, the way she would retreat into herself, the way her smiles became more and more forced. And I see how, piece by piece, I had let it happen. I had let her fade, thinking it would all work itself out. I was too complacent, too sure that the foundation we built was unshakable. But nothing is unshakable. I learned that the hard way. And now, here we are, me, standing in the rubble of a life I thought would last forever, wondering if I had any chance of rebuilding. The uncertainty is the worst part. It's the not knowing. It's the feeling of being stuck between two impossible choices, guilt and anger, love and despair. I don't know which one is eating at me more, wanting to help her, to bring her back, or resenting her for pulling away so completely. I still love her, of course. I always will. I've spent years with her, built my life around her, around us. But now, it feels like I'm loving a version of her that doesn't exist anymore. And I hate myself for feeling this way. I feel guilty for being frustrated with her. I feel guilty for wishing things were different. She's my wife, the mother of my children. She deserves my patience, my support. But at what point does it stop being about patience? At what point does it start feeling like I'm enabling something I don't understand? Every time I try to reach out to her, I'm met with resistance. Her silence has become a wall that I can't break through. And when I do manage to get her to speak, it's always the same. Empty excuses, a dismissive laugh, a wave of the hand. She says it's nothing, that it's just stress, just a phase. But I'm not stupid. I can see it. I can feel it. Something is wrong. But I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what to say to her anymore. I don't know what she needs from me. I don't know if she even wants my help. And that uncertainty is killing me. Every night, I lie awake, wondering if she's already gone in ways I can't see. If she's already checked out, emotionally, long before I ever realized it. And every morning, I look at her and wonder if today is the day I'll finally say the words that will make her listen, make her understand how lost I feel. But the words get stuck in my throat. I'm too scared to make things worse. I'm too scared to confront her when she's already so far away. How long can I keep living in this limbo? How long can I hold on to someone who doesn't want to be held on to? It came in a moment that felt almost like a nightmare, so surreal that I thought, maybe, I'd wake up. But I didn't. We were sitting at the dinner table, the kids talking about their day, their voices filling the air with the kind of noise that should have been comforting, should have been a reminder of what we were holding on to. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Every word they spoke felt distant, like I was hearing them from miles away, separated by an invisible wall. She sat there, across from me, barely touching her food. Her eyes were fixed on the table, her fingers absent-mindedly toying with her glass. And then, just as casually as if she were talking about the weather, she said, "You know, I don't think I love you anymore." The words hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for. My heart stopped. I blinked, trying to process what she had just said. The kids kept talking, oblivious, but it felt like time froze. I didn't know what to do, what to say. My mouth went dry. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, drowning out everything around me. "What do you mean?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. She shrugged, her eyes still not meeting mine. "I don't know. I just don't feel anything anymore. It's like I'm just going through the motions." Her words were so casual, so devoid of emotion, that it was like she was talking about someone else, someone I didn't even recognize. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the woman who had once told me, with tears in her eyes, that she couldn't imagine life without me. This wasn't the woman who used to laugh with me, cry with me, fight with me, all in the same breath. And yet, here she was, telling me she didn't love me. Not anymore. The words were so simple, so brutally honest, and yet they shattered everything I thought I knew about us. About her. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, to shake her and make her see what she was saying. But instead, I sat there, numb, unable to move. What could I say to that? What could I possibly say to someone who had already checked out of the life you built together? The kids kept talking, unaware of the devastation hanging in the air. But I couldn't hear them anymore. All I could hear was her voice, the coldness of her words echoing in my mind, over and over again. And for the first time, I realized something I had been denying for so long. It was over. She was gone. The woman I thought I was married to, the woman I thought I still loved, had disappeared into someone I didn't even recognize. And I didn't know what to do with that truth. It hit me slowly, like a fog creeping in, clouding my judgment until everything I had known felt uncertain. As I sat there in the aftermath of that conversation, staring at her in disbelief, I started to connect the dots. The woman I had loved, the woman I had married, was no longer the same person, and it wasn't because of some sudden shift in her feelings toward me. No, there was something deeper, something insidious, that had been eating away at her for years. And it wasn't something I could have fixed, not without understanding what it truly was. I began to see it all for what it really was. This wasn't a phase. It wasn't stress or the mundane struggles of daily life. It was a sickness, a silent, slow-burn illness that had crept into her mind, her heart, and consumed her from the inside out. And I had been too blind to see it. I thought back to all the times she had withdrawn into herself, times when she would retreat into that cold, distant silence that I had dismissed as moodiness. The nights when I'd find her staring off into space, her eyes empty, her voice flat, and I thought nothing of it. I thought she was just tired, just needing space, needing a break. But now, with everything I knew about mental illness, it was clear I had been living with someone who was struggling in ways I couldn't begin to understand. The way she would shut me out when I tried to talk about anything meaningful. The way she'd become irritable at the smallest things. The coldness in her touch, the indifference in her eyes, it was all part of the same thing. She had been fighting a battle inside of herself, a battle that I hadn't been able to see because it wasn't visible, wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was slow. It was so insidious that I hadn't even realized it was happening until it was too late. I started to understand that she wasn't just shutting me out because of me. She wasn't angry at me for something I did, but for something that had nothing to do with me at all. It was her. It was the way her mind had been slowly unraveling, the way she had been trapped in a world of her own suffering, too afraid to ask for help, too ashamed to admit what was really happening. And the truth was, I had failed her. I had ignored the signs, thinking it was just a phase, just a bad patch we'd get through. I had been so wrapped up in the life we had built, in the comfort of our routine, that I didn't stop to look deeper. I didn't stop to notice that she was disappearing, bit by bit. I had let her suffer in silence, thinking I was doing the right thing by giving her space. But space wasn't what she needed. Love wasn't what she needed. She needed help. She needed someone to see her, to understand that this wasn't her fault, that she wasn't broken in a way that could just be fixed by a comforting word, or a warm hug. She needed something more than I had been capable of giving. And now, as I looked at her, sitting there, emotionally vacant, disconnected from the life we had shared, I realized that I had been enabling her illness. Not on purpose, not out of malice, but out of ignorance. I had allowed her to suffer in silence, thinking that one day she would come back to me, that things would return to normal. But they wouldn't. Not unless she could face her demons, and not unless I could finally face the truth of what had been happening all along. The woman I loved was still there, somewhere, but I didn't know if I could find her anymore. The truth had settled in like a weight I couldn't lift. I had always prided myself on being the steady one, the reliable one, the one who could take care of everything. But now I was lost. The man I used to be, strong, calm, the one who could navigate any storm, wasn't there anymore. He had been swallowed up by the enormity of what I was facing. I was breaking down, piece by piece, in ways I had never imagined. Every moment, every second felt like a test I couldn't pass. I had to keep it together. For the kids, for the house. But inside, everything felt like it was crumbling. I couldn't even look at her without feeling this hollow ache inside. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even frustration. It was a deep, aching sadness. I was grieving for her, for us, for everything we had lost, and I didn't know how to mourn it. There were moments, late at night, when I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The silence in our bed was deafening. She lay there beside me, her back turned to me, just like she had for months. I wanted to reach out, to pull her close, but I was afraid. Afraid she would pull away again, afraid that there would be nothing left of the connection between us. I thought of all the things I could have done differently. If I had only seen the signs earlier. If I had said the right words, made her feel heard, made her feel seen. Maybe it could have made a difference. Maybe we wouldn't be here, at this breaking point, where I wasn't even sure if we could ever put the pieces back together. But it was too late now. The damage was done. I couldn't change the past. And now, all I could do was sit in this emptiness, this overwhelming sense of defeat. Every attempt I made to fix things only seemed to deepen the divide between us. I felt like I was suffocating. Every breath was a struggle. I wanted to scream, to yell, to ask why this was happening. But I couldn't. What would be the point? Would it change anything? Would she hear me? Or would it just push her further away, as it always had? And so I remained silent, trapped in this pit of despair, asking myself over and over again, was it my fault? Was I the one who failed her? Or was it something beyond either of us, something neither of us could have ever anticipated? The weight of it all threatened to crush me, and all I could do was hold my breath, waiting for something, anything, to change. But nothing did. It just stayed the same. Silence, pain, and the feeling that I was slowly losing her, piece by piece. One night, it became too much. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I couldn't carry this weight by myself. The tears came, hot and heavy, before I could even stop them. I was sitting alone in the living room, the house silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I sat there, unable to breathe, choking on the realization that I had failed her. I had failed us. All this time, I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping the peace, giving her space. But space didn't help. It just pushed her further away, further into herself. I thought about the life we used to have, the easy conversations, the warmth between us, the small gestures of love that meant everything. Now, I could barely remember the last time we had really talked, really seen each other. How long had it been since we laughed together? Since we made plans for the future? Now all I could feel was this growing emptiness, this gnawing fear that I was losing her in a way that was irreversible. I could feel the slow break in my chest as I asked myself, how could I love someone so much, yet be so helpless to fix them? How could I stand by and watch her slip away and not know how to stop it? It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, too. I had been trying so hard to keep everything together, to pretend like I was okay, like I could handle it all. But I wasn't okay. I was falling apart. I was drowning in this sense of powerlessness, and I didn't know how to come up for air. In the stillness of that moment, I cried. I cried for the woman I had lost, for the woman she had become, for the love that had slipped through my fingers without even knowing it. And I cried for myself, for the man I had become, the man who had tried so hard to save something that was already too far gone. I don't know how long I sat there, broken and lost. I don't know how long I cried, how long I let myself feel the weight of it all. But I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop. For just that moment, I needed to let it all out, to let go of the guilt and the anger, the confusion and the sadness. But even as the tears dried and the quiet settled back in, I knew that nothing had changed. I still didn't know how to fix any of this. I still didn't know if we could ever get back to what we once were. All I knew was that I couldn't carry this burden alone anymore. But I wasn't sure if anyone could help me carry it. Not her. Not now. I watched them as they played in the living room, their laughter ringing through the house, so bright and full of life. It was a bittersweet sound, one that made my heart ache and swell all at once. They didn't know what was going on. How could they? How could I explain to them that their mother, the woman they adored, was slipping away, bit by bit, every day? How could I look into their innocent eyes and tell them that the world they knew, our world, was falling apart? That the love I had once promised them was now a fractured, broken thing? I didn't have an answer. I didn't have any words that would make sense to them. I didn't know how to shield them from the truth without robbing them of their childhood, without letting them feel the weight of the pain I was carrying. But I knew I had to be strong for them. They deserved that. They deserved to feel safe, to feel loved. Even if everything else felt like it was crumbling, I had to give them that. They deserved to grow up with a sense of stability, even if I couldn't give it to myself. The thought of them growing up in a house where silence and distance took the place of love, where their mother was a shadow of the woman they once knew, it broke me. I thought about their future, about how they would perceive relationships, love, and marriage. Would they grow up thinking that this is what love was? A quiet, suffocating kind of existence where people slowly disappear from each other's lives? I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let them learn from my mistakes, from my failure to see what was happening. But how do I protect them from something they couldn't even understand? How do I shield them from a mother who is emotionally absent, from a home that has become a shell of what it once was? And what about me? What about the man I was supposed to be for them? How could I guide them through this storm when I didn't even know how to navigate it myself? I held back the tears, blinking quickly, willing myself not to break in front of them. They didn't need to see the cracks. They didn't need to feel the weight of my confusion and heartbreak. For their sake, I had to carry it alone. But inside, I was crumbling, piece by piece. I knew, deep down, that my decisions from this point forward would shape their understanding of love, of relationships. They would look to me for guidance, for the strength I thought I had. And as much as I wanted to fix this, to restore the family we once were, I didn't know if I had the strength to do it. All I knew was that for them, I had to keep going. I had to keep pretending like I had it together, like everything was going to be okay, even if I didn't believe it myself. The decision had been coming for a long time, though I hadn't fully admitted it to myself until now. I had tried everything I could think of to save us, to bring her back, to bring us back. But with every day that passed, it felt like I was fighting a losing battle. Her silence was deafening, her distance insurmountable. I couldn't keep pretending like we were on the same path, like we were heading toward the same future. I had spent so much time asking myself if it was worth fighting for. If I could find a way to fix things. Could we find our way back to each other? Could I help her see the truth, see the woman I still believed she was, underneath the layers of pain and confusion? Or had she already checked out completely? The hardest part wasn't the idea of losing her. It was the guilt of the decision itself. To walk away, to admit that I couldn't help her, that I couldn't fix what was broken. To accept that maybe, just maybe, this was beyond me, beyond us. I kept thinking about the life I thought I had, how perfect it seemed, how stable, how predictable. The routines we built, the love that felt so natural, so easy. I wanted that back. I wanted her back. But deep down, I knew that wishing for something that no longer existed was only going to drag me deeper into the misery that had already taken root. And then there was the matter of the kids. How would they feel? What would they think of their father if I made the decision to leave? How would they see love after all of this? Would they understand why I had to do it? Would they hate me for it? Would they resent me for breaking apart the family they knew, the family I promised them I would protect? But I couldn't stay in this limbo any longer. I couldn't keep living in a house where the silence was suffocating, where I felt like I was walking through a life that no longer felt like mine, where I was living with someone who was a stranger to me, someone who had slowly faded away, and I had failed to notice. I had to face the truth. Maybe it was time to let go. Maybe it was time to walk away, to stop pretending that things could go back to how they were. Maybe this was the hardest decision I would ever make. But staying in this broken version of our life wasn't fair to any of us. Not to her. Not to me. Not to the kids. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know if this was the right choice. But I knew it was the only choice left. And as painful as it was, I had to accept it. Because sometimes, love isn't enough to fix something that's been broken for too long. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting go. The hardest part wasn't the moment of decision itself. It was what came after. The space between the end and the beginning, where everything feels like rubble. I had taken the first step toward healing, but I was only just beginning to understand the weight of what it meant to truly let go. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a shell, a place I used to live, but not one that carried the warmth and life we once shared. But even in that emptiness, I knew I had to start rebuilding. For myself, for the kids. I found myself reaching for pieces of my old self. The man I used to be before I was swallowed up by the quiet chaos of our marriage. I had forgotten who I was for so long, had buried myself under the weight of trying to fix something that wasn't mine to fix. But now, I had to find him again. The man who laughed without fear. The man who dreamed without restraint. The man who could love without losing himself in the process. Therapy became a part of the healing. I knew I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. Not anymore. And in those sessions, I found a space to talk about everything I had bottled up, the years of confusion, of guilt, of watching someone I loved slip away and not knowing how to reach her. I began to untangle the mess in my mind, to understand the parts of myself that had been buried. And slowly, I started to breathe again. The kids didn't need to know all the details. They didn't need to understand the complexity of the relationship I had with their mother, the reasons behind our separation. But they needed to feel loved, supported, and safe. And so I focused on them. I found ways to connect with them, to create moments of joy in the midst of everything. I learned to listen more, to be present in their lives, to show them that despite everything, I would always be there for them. In the quiet moments, when I allowed myself to reflect, I realized something else, that it wasn't about forgetting her or the life we had, but about accepting it. Accepting that we had been a part of each other's lives for a reason, and that it was okay to let go. That even though we had failed, we had tried. And that, in the end, was enough. Rebuilding wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. It took time. And I knew that I wasn't the same person I was before all of this. I wasn't who I had been when I thought everything was perfect. But that didn't mean I was lost. It just meant that I was evolving. That I was learning to live again, to love again, in a way that was healthier and more honest. Some days, I would still think about her. The woman I had married. The woman who had been my everything. And the pain of losing her would still catch me off guard, still twist inside of me like a forgotten wound. But I had learned to live with that pain, to allow it to be a part of my story without letting it define me. I had a new story now, one of survival, one of acceptance, and maybe, just maybe, a story of healing. And that was enough.